You are alive in the year 536, but you haven't seen the sun in months. A mysterious dark fog has swallowed the sky, and a strange dust falls like snow. The crops have failed, the air is unnaturally cold, and the world is beginning to starve. But the real horror hasn't started yet. It will begin the day you realise what your desperate neighbours are willing to do to survive. Welcome, weary travellers. My name is Oliver, and I'll be your guide through tonight's journey. Here at Sleepy History, we throw you directly into the most shocking stories of the past, then slowly transition into history's most boring realities. Our tales are perfectly engineered to help you easily drift into your peaceful slumber. Before we begin tonight's journey into humanity's darkest year, I want to thank this wonderful community for its support. For those who wish to return for our future journeys, subscribing is the easiest way to find your way back to Sleepy History. I'd love to hear from you, so drop a comment and let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is. It's a joy seeing who's choosing to spend their evening with our global community of history lovers. Now, please settle into your most comfortable position, adjust your pillows, pull up that blanket, and feel the weight of the day begin to melt away. Take your deepest breath and slowly exhale. There is nothing left to do, nowhere else to be. There is only the sound of my voice. Let it be your anchor as your eyelids grow heavy, allowing the modern world to fade away as we return to the year 536 AD, when the sun disappeared and civilization itself began to crumble. Chapter 1. The Day the Sun Died. Picture this. You're living in 536 AD, and you've just experienced nature's ultimate plot twist. One morning, you wake up expecting the usual medieval sunrise, you know, that golden orb that's been reliably showing up for work every single day since, well, forever. Instead, you get what can only be described as the world's worst Instagram filter permanently stuck over reality. The sun didn't just dim, it vanished behind a mysterious veil that turned the entire sky into a sickly, yellowish-grey mess. Imagine if someone took your Ring doorbell camera, smeared Vaseline all over the lens, then cranked the brightness down to basement dungeon levels. That's your new reality for the next 18 months. But here's the kicker. You have absolutely no idea what's happening. There's no CNN to explain that the Krakatoa volcano just had the geological equivalent of a nuclear meltdown. No meteorologists to tell you that volcanic ash is circling the globe like the world's most depressing snow globe. You just know that something has gone catastrophically wrong with the basic mechanics of existence. Your medieval brain is working overtime, trying to process this cosmic curveball. Maybe it's God's wrath? The apocalypse? Did someone forget to pay the celestial electric bill? Meanwhile, your crops, those precious stalks of grain that represent the difference between having dinner and becoming dinner, are looking at this perpetual twilight and basically throwing in the agricultural towel and the cold. Oh, the delicious irony of the cold. Delicious. It's July, the month that should have you sweating through your rough-spun tunic while you harvest grain under the blazing sun. Instead, you're shivering like you're attending the world's most depressing ice-capade. Your barley is turning black. Your oats are committing botanical suicide. Your wheat looks like it's auditioning for a Tim Burton movie. But you don't know about crop failure statistics or global climate disruption. You just know that your food is dying, and winter, a winter that shouldn't exist for months, has arrived with the subtlety of a Viking raid. The animals sense it first, as animals always do. Your chickens stop laying eggs, as if they've collectively decided that bringing new life into this twilight world would be cruel. Your cow's milk production drops faster than your hopes for a normal harvest. Even your pig, that reliable source of future bacon, seems to sense that something fundamental has shifted in the cosmic order. Your neighbours start gathering in worried clusters, whispering theories that range from divine punishment to the end times. Because when you lack modern science, every unexplained phenomenon becomes a theological crisis. Someone suggests it might be a sign that the Vikings are coming. Someone else wonders if the Romans are conducting some kind of dark magic. The village priest looks particularly concerned, probably wondering if he missed a memo from the Vatican about incoming apocalypses. Meanwhile, you're doing the medieval equivalent of checking your smartphone weather app, which is to say, staring helplessly at the sky and hoping for literally any sign that this nightmare has an expiration date. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Not for a long, long time. Chapter 2. The Hunger Games. Begin. Welcome to Medieval Meal Planning, 536 AD edition, where your grocery store is a barren field and your meal prep involves calculating exactly how many days you can stretch a handful of grain before your family starts looking at the family dog with culinary curiosity. Remember those abundant harvests you took for granted, those golden waves of grain that made you feel like a successful medieval farmer? Yeah, those are about as extinct as your chances of seeing actual sunlight anytime soon. Your granary, once a symbol of prosperity and forward-thinking food storage, now echoes with the hollow sound of your increasingly desperate inventory checks. Let's talk about your new diet plan. And no, it's not the trendy intermittent fasting that your modern descendants will voluntarily choose. This is involuntary starvation with a side of existential dread. Your daily caloric intake has dropped from barely adequate for manual labour to technically still alive, but questioning whether that's a good thing. Breakfast used to be a chunk of bread, maybe some ale if you were feeling fancy. Now breakfast is a careful calculation of how many breadcrumbs you can spare without compromising dinner, which itself is a careful calculation of how many breadcrumbs you can spare without compromising tomorrow's breakfast. It's like a really depressing math word problem where the answer is always not enough. Your neighbours, those friendly folks you used to chat with about weather and livestock, have developed a new social interaction style best described as suspiciously eyeing each other's remaining food supplies. Borrowing a cup of grain has become roughly equivalent to asking someone for their kidney. The social contract of medieval community living is developing some serious cracks. And the children. Oh, the children are the worst part of this whole nightmare scenario. They don't understand why their portions keep shrinking. They don't comprehend that mommy and daddy are giving them the largest share of nothing. They just know they're hungry, and they're asking questions like, when will there be more food? With the kind of innocent expectation that breaks your medieval heart into approximately 1,000 pieces. Your storage situation is becoming a daily exercise in creative denial. That pile of grain that looked substantial a month ago now resembles a small decorative accent in your increasingly empty storage containers. You find yourself counting individual kernels like a medieval accountant auditing the books of a failing business, which, let's be honest, is exactly what your household has become. The protein situation is particularly grim. Your chickens, those feathered retirement investments, are laying eggs about as frequently as you're seeing the sun, which is to say, not at all. Your cow's milk production has dropped to homeopathic levels. Even your pig, that walking bacon factory, is losing weight faster than a contestant on a medieval reality show about extreme dieting. But here's where it gets really fun. You start eyeing foods that would have made you gag just months ago. Tree bark starts looking like a reasonable breakfast option. Grass becomes a potential salad ingredient. You find yourself seriously considering whether that leather belt might be more nutritious than fashionable. Your spice rack, once containing exotic flavours that made your porridge almost palatable, now serves as emergency caloric supplements. You're literally eating your seasonings, turning your final meals into bland, flavourless exercises in pure survival. Salt becomes more precious than silver. A dried herb is worth more than a day's wages, if there were any wages to be earned in this economy of scarcity. Chapter 3. When neighbours become strangers. The social fabric of your medieval community is unravelling faster than a cheap tunic in a windstorm. And trust me, that's saying something, because medieval clothing wasn't exactly known for its durability in the first place. Remember when your biggest neighbourhood drama was whose cow wandered into whose grain field? Those were the days, weren't they? Now your community interactions have evolved into something that would make a paranoid survivalist proud. Everyone's become a medieval prepper, except nobody had the foresight to actually prep for the sun, literally disappearing. Your neighbour Johann, who used to cheerfully loan you farming tools and share gossip about the local nobility, now guards his remaining grain stores like a dragon protecting its hoard. And honestly, you can't blame him, because you're doing exactly the same thing. That warm sense of community solidarity has been replaced by a cold calculation of resource allocation that would make an accountant weep. The village, well, once a social gathering spot where people shared news and arranged marriages, has become an exercise in strategic timing. You wait until you're absolutely certain no one is watching before you approach, because drawing water now feels like announcing, I'm still alive and consuming resources to the entire neighbourhood. Every interaction is loaded with subtext about who's surviving better than whom. Children, those innocent little chaos agents, are now valuable intelligence assets. They wander between houses, inadvertently reporting on which families still have food, who's looking particularly thin, and where that suspicious smoke might be coming from. Your little Emma comes home with reports that would make a medieval spy network jealous. Old Henrik's family hasn't come outside in 3 days, or I heard crying from the miller's house. The village priest, poor soul, is working overtime trying to maintain some semblance of moral order, while his own stomach growls during sermons. His homilies about sharing and community support ring hollow, when everyone knows that sharing now literally means choosing who lives and who dies. Even divine guidance gets complicated when survival instincts kick in. Market Day, if you can still call it that, has transformed into the world's most depressing trade show. People arrive with items that would have seemed worthless months ago. A handful of acorns, some boiled leather, maybe a few seeds salvaged from rotting vegetables. The currency of desperation has its own exchange rate, and it's not favourable to anyone. Your livestock, those animals that used to represent wealth and status, have become walking moral dilemmas. Do you slaughter your cow now for immediate meat, or keep it alive hoping for future milk that may never come? Do you eat your chickens today, or hold out hope that they might start laying eggs again when this nightmare ends? These decisions would challenge a medieval philosopher if anyone had the luxury of philosophical contemplation anymore. The elderly members of your community face the cruelest mathematics of all. They require the same amount of food, but contribute less labour. You watch families make calculations that no one should ever have to make, weighing love against survival in equations that have no right answers. And then there are the strangers, refugees from other villages where the situation has become even more desperate. They arrive like walking warnings of what your own future might hold, carrying stories of communities that have already crossed lines that seemed uncrossable just months ago. Their hollow eyes tell stories that no one wants to hear, but everyone needs to understand. Sleep becomes elusive, not just because of hunger, but because of the sounds, strange noises in the night that could be anything. Scavenging animals, desperate neighbours, or worse. You find yourself lying awake, listening for footsteps that might belong to someone who's decided that your family's remaining resources are worth the risk of violence. Chapter 4. The Art of Medieval Survival. Now we enter the realm of true medieval MacGyvering, where creativity meets desperation and produces solutions that would make your modern self question the very nature of edibility. The transformation from farmer to scavenger happens gradually. Then all at once you find yourself developing skills that no agricultural manual ever covered. Bark identification becomes a crucial survival skill. Oak bark has nutritional value, pine needles contain vitamin C, and birch bark can be ground into a flour substitute that tastes exactly as appetizing as it sounds. Your daily routine now revolves around foraging expeditions that would challenge a wilderness survival expert. You wake before dawn, not that dawn means much when the sun is perpetually filtered through volcanic ash, and venture into forests that once seemed merely decorative. Every root, berry, and edible plant becomes a potential lifeline. The preparation of these alternative foods requires techniques that your grandmother never taught you. Acorns must be leached of their bitter tannins through repeated soaking and boiling. Grass seeds need to be processed in ways that extract maximum nutrition while remaining digestible. You become an expert in turning inedible into barely edible through sheer determination and increasingly flexible standards. Your cooking methods adapt to accommodate ingredients that were never meant for human consumption. That large pot that once simmered hearty stews now bubbles with mysterious concoctions that could charitably be called soup if you squint and use your imagination. The smell alone would have sent you running 6 months ago. Now it represents the difference between eating and not eating. Water becomes a precious commodity requiring careful management. Every drop must be conserved, purified, and allocated with mathematical precision. You develop systems for collecting rainwater that would impress a modern efficiency expert. Even dishwater gets reused for cleaning, then for washing, then for purposes that hygiene standards would prefer not to discuss. Clothing maintenance becomes an exercise in archaeological restoration. Your garments, already worn thin by normal use, now must last indefinitely because replacement textiles are fantasy items. You learn to patch holes with scraps that themselves have holes. Your sewing skills improve dramatically out of sheer necessity, as every thread becomes irreplaceable. Tool preservation takes on critical importance. That iron knife, once used for routine food preparation, now represents irreplaceable technology. You baby it like a family heirloom, keeping it sharp, clean, and carefully stored. Every metal implement becomes precious because the blacksmith has no fuel for his forge and no iron for his craft. Fuel management becomes a complex logistical challenge. Firewood, once abundant in surrounding forests, now requires strategic planning. Every piece of burnable material gets evaluated for maximum heat output versus acquisition effort. You develop burning techniques that extract every possible BTU from your limited fuel supplies. Your shelter requires constant maintenance with increasingly scarce materials. Thatch needs replacing, but straw is now food. Mud chinking needs repair, but clay requires energy to gather and prepare. Every improvement to your living conditions must be weighed against the resources it consumes. Sleep patterns adjust to conserve energy and body heat. You learn to sleep longer hours to reduce caloric needs. Your bed becomes a carefully engineered heat retention system using every available blanket, hide, and warm body. Family members sleep closer together, not just for warmth, but for the psychological comfort of shared survival. Hygiene standards undergo practical adjustments that would horrify your modern sensibilities. Soap becomes a luxury item reserved for special occasions. Bathing reduces to essential maintenance rather than comfort. Your hair becomes an experiment in natural oil distribution systems. Medical care simplifies to basic wound cleaning and hoping for the best. Minor injuries that would have been trivial concerns now pose serious risks to survival capability. You develop a relationship with pain that accepts chronic discomfort as the new normal baseline. Chapter 5. The Long Darkness. The months stretch endlessly, marked not by the familiar rhythm of seasons but by the gradual progression of deteriorating conditions that seem to have no bottom floor. Each morning brings the same disappointing sunrise that isn't really a sunrise. The sky lightens to its perpetual twilight grey, offering just enough illumination to see the continued devastation, but never enough warmth to nurture life. Your body's natural circadian rhythms, evolved over thousands of years to respond to proper sunlight, begin to drift into confusion. The cold has settled into your bones with the permanence of a chronic condition. This isn't the clean, crisp cold of proper winter that promises eventual spring warmth. This is a damp, penetrating chill that seeps through clothing, through skin, through hope itself. Your body burns calories just maintaining basic temperature. Calories you can't afford to spare. Seasonal confusion affects every living thing around you. Trees that should be budding remain dormant. Animals that should be emerging from winter hibernation stay hidden. The natural world seems to be holding its breath, waiting for a signal that never comes. Birds that should be migrating simply disappear, leaving an unnatural silence that makes the world feel abandoned. Your perception of time begins to distort. Without proper daylight cycles, days blend into nights, blend into more days, in an endless grey sequence. You find yourself losing track of what day it is, what month it might be, whether time is moving forward at all. The calendar becomes a meaningless artifact from a world where seasons mattered. The social rhythms of your community slow to match the diminished energy of survival. Conversations become shorter, more focused on immediate necessities. Laughter becomes rare enough to be noteworthy. Children's play evolves into quiet, conservation-focused activities that wouldn't be recognisable as play to their former selves. Religious observances take on desperate undertones as people search for meaning in the meaningless. Prayers become more frequent and more urgent. The village priest struggles to maintain morale while privately questioning whether this catastrophe represents divine punishment or divine abandonment. Faith becomes both comfort and burden. Work continues, but changes character entirely. Farming becomes an exercise in hopeful futility as you tend crops that show no signs of recovery. Maintenance tasks focus on preservation rather than improvement. Craftswork shifts toward repairing and extending the life of existing items rather than creating new ones. Your dreams, when hunger allows you to sleep deeply enough to dream, become strange landscapes of abundance that feel like memories from someone else's life. You dream of sunshine so bright it hurts, of harvests so plentiful they seem mythological, of warmth so complete it feels fictional. The boundaries between day and night blur into a continuous state of grey existence. Your oil lamps burn longer, consuming precious fuel, because the difference between indoor and outdoor lighting becomes negligible. Darkness becomes relative rather than absolute. Silence becomes the dominant sound of your world. Without the busy hum of agricultural activity, without the sounds of healthy livestock, Without the cheerful noise of well-fed children, your environment settles into a quietness that feels like the world holding its breath. Even your thoughts begin to move more slowly, conserving mental energy the same way your body conserves physical energy. Planning beyond the immediate future becomes difficult when the immediate future itself seems uncertain. Long-term thinking becomes a luxury your starving brain can't afford. Weather patterns that once seemed predictable become entirely arbitrary. Rain falls without warning, snow appears in seasons where it has no business existing, and wind carries the strange smell of ash that has travelled impossible distances. The natural world operates by rules that no longer make sense. Your body adapts to the new reality, with changes that would alarm you if you had the energy to be alarmed. Weight loss becomes so gradual and universal that it stops being noticeable. Muscle mass decreases as your body burns whatever fuel it can find. Your skin takes on the pale, drawn quality of someone recovering from a long illness. The empty granary echoes with sounds that mock your former abundance. Mice search desperately for grain that no longer exists. The storage containers that once represented security now serve as reminders of how quickly prosperity can vanish. Every empty corner tells the story of resources consumed and not replaced. And still, the sun does not return. Still, the sky maintains its sickly glow that promises nothing and delivers less. Still, the world waits in its unnatural twilight for a dawn that may never come. Chapter 6. The daily routine of survival. The days now follow a pattern as unchanging as the grey sky above. You wake when your body can no longer ignore the cold that has settled deep into your bones during the night. The straw beneath you, once soft and welcoming, has compressed into a thin barrier between your aching body and the hard earth floor. Your first conscious thought is always the same: how much food remains? The morning ritual begins with checking the grain stores. Your footsteps echo hollow in the storage area as you approach the containers that once brimmed with abundance. The wooden barrel that held your wheat now contains perhaps a handful of kernels, scattered across the bottom like lonely stars in an empty sky. You count them: 1, 2, 3, 8 kernels in total. 8 small seeds that represent another day of existence. The water container requires daily attention. The wooden bucket holds perhaps 2 inches of murky liquid, carefully collected from the previous day's drizzle. You dip your finger into the water and taste it. Metallic, strange, carrying flavours that water should not possess. Yet it is water, and water means life. So you drink it slowly, allowing each sip to register fully in your awareness. The fire pit holds only cold ashes from yesterday's meagre flame. Building a new fire requires gathering fuel, and fuel has become precious beyond measure. You select each stick with the care of a craftsman choosing materials for the most important project of his life. A twig here, a piece of bark there, perhaps a small branch if fortune smiles upon you. The tinder catches slowly. Your breath creates small puffs of white vapour in the cold air as you coax the flame to life. The first spark brings a moment of satisfaction that feels disproportionate to such a simple achievement. Fire means warmth. Fire means the possibility of cooking. Fire means another day of human civilization, continuing against impossible odds. Your children wake one by one, their small bodies huddled together beneath whatever coverings you have managed to gather. Little Emma stirs first, her eyes opening to the same grey world that has greeted her for months now. She no longer asks when the sun will return. She no longer asks when there will be more food. She simply accepts this reality with the adaptability that children possess. Young Thomas moves more slowly than he once did. His limbs have grown thin, his cheeks hollow, yet his eyes still hold the spark of life that refuses to be extinguished. He helps his sister arrange their bedding, folding the thin blankets with the precision of someone who understands that everything must be cared for, everything must last. The morning meal consists of careful measurement and deliberate consumption. 3 kernels of grain for each child, 2 for yourself. The kernels must be chewed slowly, thoroughly, allowing every fragment to be extracted and swallowed. Nothing can be wasted, nothing can be lost. Each kernel represents precious energy that must sustain life for as long as possible. Water accompanies the grain. Small sips, carefully rationed, just enough to help with swallowing. The children have learned not to ask for more. They have learned that more does not exist. They consume their portion with the solemnity of participants in a sacred ritual, which perhaps this has become. After the morning meal comes the daily inventory. Every item in your possession must be accounted for and evaluated. The knife blade gets examined for signs of rust or damage. The cooking pot receives inspection for cracks or weakening. Your clothing gets checked for new holes or wearing spots that might require attention. The tool maintenance begins with sharpening the knife on a piece of stone. The rhythmic scraping sound echoes in the quiet space, a steady whisper of metal against rock. Sharp tools work more efficiently. Efficient tools waste less energy. Energy conservation has become the organizing principle around which all decisions revolve. Your wife tends to the mending pile. The needle moves through fabric with practiced efficiency, closing holes that threaten to expand into larger problems. Each stitch represents time and effort invested in maintaining the barriers between your family and the cold world outside. Thread has become precious. Each length must accomplish maximum repair with minimum waste. The children's tasks focus on gathering and sorting. They collect any combustible materials found within walking distance of the dwelling, small twigs, dried leaves, pieces of bark that might burn cleanly. Their young eyes spot resources that adult vision might overlook. Their small hands can reach into spaces that larger hands cannot access. By midday, the light reaches its maximum intensity, which amounts to a pale illumination that barely penetrates the persistent gloom. This is the time for venturing outside, for searching the immediate area for anything edible, anything useful, anything that might extend survival for another day. The foraging expedition requires careful planning. Energy expenditure must be weighed against potential rewards. Walking too far costs calories that may not be recovered. Staying too close to home yields resources that have already been exhausted. The balance point shifts daily as circumstances change and opportunities diminish. Your feet know every path within reasonable walking distance. The forest floor has been examined and re-examined countless times, yet still you search, hoping that something previously overlooked might reveal itself. A few acorns that escaped earlier notice, some edible bark that might have loosened from a tree trunk, perhaps some berries that somehow survived the unnatural cold. The afternoon brings repair work and preparation for the next day's challenges. Tools need maintenance, clothing requires attention, the dwelling itself demands constant care to maintain its protection against the elements. Everything gradually deteriorates and only constant vigilance prevents total collapse. The children play quietly during the afternoon hours. Their games have adapted to the new reality. They no longer run and shout with the energy of abundant health. Instead, they engage in sitting games, quiet storytelling, activities that conserve precious energy while still providing mental stimulation. Their laughter, when it comes, sounds different now, more subdued, more precious. Chapter 7. The Endless Preparation. Evening preparation begins while daylight still allows for detailed work. The fire must be banked to provide warmth through the night without consuming excessive fuel. Each piece of wood gets positioned with careful consideration of burning rate and heat output. The ashes from previous fires get saved for their value as insulation and soil amendment. The bedding arrangement requires daily attention to maintain maximum warmth retention. The straw gets fluffed and redistributed to eliminate compressed spots that conduct cold from the ground. Family members arrange themselves according to heat-sharing principles that maximize collective warmth while minimizing individual discomfort. Food preparation for the evening meal follows the same careful protocols as the morning routine. Grain gets counted, kernel by kernel. Water gets measured with precision. The cooking process must extract maximum nutrition while consuming minimum fuel. Every decision balances multiple competing needs. The cooking pot holds perhaps a cup of water mixed with the few remaining grain kernels. The mixture simmers slowly over the carefully maintained fire. Steam rises, carrying the thin aroma of what might generously be called soup. The smell triggers hunger responses that must be carefully controlled and managed. While the meal cooks, conversation fills the time with gentle words that avoid topics of hunger, cold, or uncertain future. Stories get told about better times, about harvests from previous years, about warm summer days that feel like memories from another person's life. The children listen with the attention of students learning important lessons about hope. Your wife speaks softly about techniques for preserving warmth during sleep. Layer placement, body positioning, breath control methods that help maintain core temperature through the long night hours. These conversations serve both practical and psychological purposes, providing useful information while maintaining the sense that tomorrow will come and must be prepared for. The evening meal gets consumed with the same careful attention as the morning portion. Each spoonful receives complete focus. The liquid gets sipped slowly, allowing the warmth to spread through the body before the next sip begins. The few grain pieces get chewed thoroughly, completely, until every particle has been extracted and swallowed. After eating, the dishes require cleaning despite the scarcity of water and soap. Cleanliness prevents illness, and illness in current circumstances could prove fatal. A small amount of water rinses the cooking pots. The same water then cleans the eating vessels. Nothing gets wasted, nothing gets overlooked. The fire gets prepared for night burning. Larger pieces of wood get positioned to burn slowly and steadily through the dark hours. The arrangement must provide warmth without creating flames that might spread or consume fuel too quickly. Embers get banked with ash to control their burning rate. Personal hygiene receives attention within the constraints of available resources. Faces and hands get cleaned with small amounts of water. Hair gets combed and arranged to reduce tangling and matting. Teeth get cleaned with frayed twigs or small pieces of cloth. These activities maintain dignity and health despite the surrounding hardships. Clothing gets arranged for maximum nighttime warmth. Garments that were worn during the day get folded and positioned to serve as additional insulation during sleep. Every piece of fabric serves multiple purposes throughout the daily cycle of survival activities. The children receive special attention during evening preparations. Their smaller bodies lose heat more quickly than adult bodies. Extra coverings get arranged around them. Warm stones from near the fire get wrapped in cloth and placed near their sleeping areas to provide additional heat sources through the night. Stories and quiet songs help transition from the activities of day to the rest of night. Familiar tales about brave heroes and eventual triumph provide comfort without requiring the energy expenditure of physical activity. Voices stay soft to conserve strength, while still providing the human connection that makes survival psychologically bearable. Prayer time offers opportunity for expressing gratitude for another day of survival, while requesting continued protection through the night and into tomorrow. These moments of reflection acknowledge both the difficulty of current circumstances and the hope that circumstances will eventually improve. The final tasks of evening involve securing the dwelling against cold and possible intrusion. The door gets blocked and sealed as effectively as possible. Windows or openings get covered with whatever materials provide insulation. Every effort gets made to create a barrier between the family and the hostile world outside. Sleep preparation becomes a careful process of positioning and arrangement. Bodies get arranged to share warmth while allowing each person adequate space for rest. Blankets and coverings get distributed according to need and availability. The goal involves creating the best possible sleeping conditions within severe constraints. The transition to sleep comes gradually as the fire burns lower and the dwelling grows darker. Consciousness fades slowly, accompanied by the sounds of family breathing, the whisper of wind outside, and the soft crackling of embers that represent the barrier between survival and surrender to the cold. Chapter 8. The Rhythm of Scarcity. Morning arrives with the same grey light that has marked every dawn for months beyond counting. The cold air carries the familiar weight of moisture and ash, settling into the spaces between your ribs, like an unwelcome visitor that refuses to leave. Your breath creates small clouds that dissipate quickly in the still air of the dwelling. The morning inspection begins as it always begins, with the careful accounting of resources that determines the shape of another day. The grain container receives your first attention, though you already know what you will find there. Perhaps 6 kernels remain, scattered across the wooden bottom like forgotten promises of better times. Your fingers move slowly as you count each kernel individually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 small pieces of sustenance that must somehow stretch to cover the needs of a family that grows weaker with each passing day. The mathematics of survival admit no comfortable solutions, only the stark arithmetic of gradual decline. The water supply requires equal attention. The collection vessel holds perhaps 1.5 inches of liquid, gathered drop by drop from the previous day's light rain. The water appears cloudy, tinged with the strange colours that have become common in all precipitation since the sky changed. Yet water remains water, and life cannot continue without it. You lift the container carefully, mindful that any spillage represents loss that cannot be recovered. The liquid moves slowly, thick with particles that should not belong in proper water. You bring it close to your face and breathe in the scent. Metallic, sharp, carrying undertones of substances that have no names in your vocabulary. The fire pit contains only the grey remnants of yesterday's flame. Cold ash holds no warmth, no comfort, no promise of the heat that will be needed to face another day of temperatures that belong to deep winter rather than what should have been growing season. Building a new fire requires energy that you can barely afford to spend. Fuel gathering begins with the careful selection of combustible materials from your dwindling store. Each piece of wood gets evaluated for its burning characteristics. Soft woods that ignite quickly but burn briefly, harder woods that require more effort to light but provide longer-lasting heat, bark that catches easily but produces little sustained warmth. The kindling preparation follows a ritual that has become as familiar as breathing. Small twigs get broken into precise lengths that will catch flame readily. Dry grass gets pulled apart into fine strands that will ignite from the smallest spark. Pieces of bark get peeled into thin strips that bridge the gap between initial flame and sustainable fire. Your hands move with the practiced efficiency of someone who has performed these tasks countless times under conditions that allow no margin for error. Every motion serves a purpose. Every gesture conserves energy while accomplishing necessary work. Waste has become an unaffordable luxury. The tinder bundle forms slowly in your palms. Grass fibers interweave with bark strips and small twigs to create a structure that will accept flame and nurture it into sustainable fire. The bundle must be loose enough to allow air circulation, yet dense enough to maintain heat concentration. Balance in all things has become essential for survival. The flint and steel receive careful handling as you attempt to create the spark that will bring fire back into your world. The steel strikes the flint with measured force, producing tiny sparks that arch through the cold air like falling stars. Most sparks die before reaching the tinder. Some find their target but fail to catch. Only patience and persistence can overcome the odds. A spark catches finally, glowing orange in the grey nest of prepared materials. Your breath provides gentle encouragement, coaxing the tiny flame to spread through the kindling bundle. Too much air will extinguish the fragile fire. Too little will starve it of oxygen. The balance point requires constant attention and adjustment. The flame grows slowly, spreading from tinder to kindling to small fuel pieces. Each stage of fire development demands different techniques, different types of attention. The progression from spark to sustainable flame represents one of humanity's most fundamental achievements, now reduced to daily necessity for basic survival. Larger fuel pieces get added gradually as the fire establishes itself. Each addition must be timed precisely to maintain heat without overwhelming the growing flame. Wood placement affects air circulation, burning rate, and heat distribution. These considerations have become second nature through months of practice. The cooking pot finds its place over the growing fire. The metal container shows signs of constant use. Blackened bottom, small dents from careful handling, thin spots where the metal has worn from repeated heating and cooling, yet it remains functional, and functionality has become the only measure of value that matters. Water goes into the pot first. The cloudy liquid hisses slightly as it contacts the warming metal. Steam begins to rise almost immediately, carrying with it the strange scents that have become characteristic of all precipitation in this altered world. The water must be heated thoroughly to eliminate any harmful elements it might contain. The grain kernels follow the water into the pot. 6 small pieces that will somehow become a meal for 4 people. The mathematics seem impossible, yet this impossibility must become reality because no alternative exists. The kernels float in the water like tiny islands in a miniature sea. Heat application requires careful management to extract maximum nutrition while consuming minimum fuel. The water must reach sufficient temperature to soften the grain and release its nutritional content. Boiling wastes energy through excessive steam production. Insufficient heat fails to properly prepare the food. The correct temperature lies in the narrow range between these extremes. The cooking process proceeds slowly, methodically, with constant attention to fuel consumption and heat distribution. The fire burns steadily beneath the pot, providing gentle heat that gradually transforms grain and water into something that might be called soup if one's standards have adjusted appropriately to current circumstances. During the cooking time, other morning tasks receive attention. Bedding gets shaken and rearranged to eliminate the compressed spots that develop during sleep. Clothing gets examined for new damage that might require repair. Tools get checked for proper condition and readiness for the day's challenges. Your wife tends to the children's needs with the quiet efficiency that has characterized her approach to every challenge this long crisis has presented. Little Emma receives help arranging her thin dress and worn shoes. Young Thomas gets assistance with the tasks that have become difficult as his strength has diminished with inadequate nutrition. The children have adapted to their circumstances with the remarkable flexibility that characterizes young minds confronting impossible situations. They no longer complain about hunger or cold. They no longer ask when conditions will improve. They simply accept each day as it comes and find small moments of satisfaction in the tiny victories that mark survival. Their play has evolved to match their energy levels and available space. Games that once involved running and shouting have given way to quiet activities that can be conducted within the confines of the dwelling. Storytelling, simple songs, and gentle interactions that provide mental stimulation without requiring physical exertion. Chapter 9. The Endless Inventory. The meal preparation nears completion as steam rises from the cooking pot in thin wisps that carry the aroma of grain and water combined into something approaching nourishment. The smell triggers responses in empty stomachs that must be carefully controlled and managed to prevent the waste of energy through excessive anticipation. Serving the meal requires precise division of inadequate resources among family members whose needs exceed what can be provided. The cooking pot contains perhaps 3/4 of a cup of thin liquid with the grain kernels distributed throughout like rare treasures in a nearly empty chest. Your bowl receives its portion first, approximately 3 spoonfuls of the weak soup along with 1.5 grain kernels. The liquid appears thin and pale, carrying little substance beyond the basic combination of water and grain that forms its foundation. Yet this represents sustenance, and sustenance represents another day of continued existence. Emma's bowl holds slightly more than your own portion, because growing children require adequate nutrition, even when adequate nutrition remains unavailable. Her serving contains perhaps 4 spoonfuls of liquid and 2 grain kernels. She accepts the bowl with the serious attention of someone who understands that this represents the most important event of her morning. Thomas receives a similar portion to his sister, though his bowl gets an extra grain kernel because his larger size requires additional sustenance to maintain basic bodily functions. He holds his serving carefully, mindful that any spillage represents irreplaceable loss. His thin hands wrap around the bowl to absorb whatever warmth the liquid might provide. Your wife takes the smallest portion, as has become her custom throughout the long months of shortage. Her bowl contains perhaps 2.5 spoonfuls of soup and 1 grain kernel. She insists that growing children need more food than adults, though her own body shows clear signs of the inadequate nutrition she has endured, while ensuring her family receives whatever additional sustenance she can provide. The consumption of the meal proceeds with deliberate slowness. Each spoonful receives complete attention from the moment it leaves the bowl until the last trace has been swallowed and absorbed. The liquid must be sipped slowly to allow maximum absorption and to extend the psychological satisfaction of eating for as long as possible. The grain kernels require careful chewing to extract their full nutritional value. Each kernel gets broken down completely before swallowing, ensuring that no nutrients escape extraction through hasty consumption. The texture provides variety that makes the meal seem more substantial than its actual nutritional content would suggest. Conversation during eating remains minimal to conserve energy and to allow complete focus on the consumption process. Words require energy to produce and energy to process. During mealtimes, energy must be dedicated entirely to the absorption and utilization of whatever sustenance has been made available. After eating, the cleaning process begins with conservation of resources as the primary consideration. The cooking pot receives rinsing with a small amount of water that gets warmed over the fire to improve its cleaning effectiveness. The used water then serves to rinse the eating bowls before finally being used for personal washing. The fire gets tended carefully to maintain heat while conserving fuel. Larger pieces of wood get positioned to burn slowly and efficiently through the remainder of the morning. The flame must provide warmth for the family while avoiding the waste that comes from excessive fuel consumption or uncontrolled burning. Tool maintenance receives daily attention because tools represent irreplaceable technology in the current circumstances. The knife blade gets examined for signs of damage or dullness that might affect its efficiency. The cooking implements get checked for wear or damage that could compromise their functionality. The needle and thread receive careful storage and protection because clothing repair has become essential for maintaining protection against the cold. Fabric tears that go unrepaired quickly become larger problems that consume more materials and energy to address. Prevention through prompt attention proves more efficient than delayed response to developing issues. Clothing inventory takes place each morning to assess the condition of garments that must last indefinitely under conditions that accelerate wear and damage. Your tunic shows new thin spots where the fabric has worn through repeated use and washing. Small holes threaten to become larger problems if not addressed promptly. Your wife's dress requires attention to several seams that have begun to separate under the stress of constant wear. The fabric itself has become thin and fragile from months of use without replacement. Patches from other worn garments provide material for repairs, though the patchwork appearance matters less than functionality. The children's clothing receives priority attention because their growing bodies stress garments in ways that adult clothing does not experience. Emma's dress needs lengthening as she continues to grow despite inadequate nutrition. Thomas's shoes require reinforcement where the leather has begun to separate from the sole. Blanket maintenance occupies significant time because warmth during sleep represents the difference between rest and dangerous exposure to cold. The rough fabric shows signs of wear at fold points, where repeated use has weakened the weave. Small tears get mended before they can expand into larger problems. The inventory process extends to every item within the dwelling because each object might prove essential for survival under circumstances that remain unpredictable. Cooking vessels, storage containers, tools, and personal items all receive examination and cataloguing to ensure nothing gets overlooked or forgotten. Storage containers get checked for signs of damage that might compromise their ability to protect remaining supplies from moisture, pests, or contamination. The grain barrel requires attention to areas where the wood has begun to shrink and separate. Gaps that allow air circulation also permit entry of moisture and insects. Personal items receive evaluation for their continued utility and their potential for alternative uses under changing circumstances. A broken comb might provide material for small repairs. Worn leather goods might be processed into food if other options become exhausted. Nothing can be considered waste until all possible uses have been exhausted. The daily inventory serves multiple purposes beyond simple accounting. The process provides structure to days that might otherwise feel formless and endless. The careful attention to detail creates a sense of control over circumstances that remain largely beyond human influence. The routine establishes continuity that helps maintain psychological stability. Documentation of changes in inventory levels helps track the rates of resource consumption and provides data for planning future rationing strategies. If grain supplies decrease by a certain amount each day, simple mathematics can predict how long current supplies might last under various consumption scenarios. Chapter 10. The Weight of Stillness. The midday hours bring a peculiar quality of light that has become familiar yet remains unsettling after months of repetition. The sky maintains its pale grey colour, neither bright nor dark, creating an eternal twilight that seems to exist outside the normal progression of time. Shadows form weakly, without the sharp definition that proper sunlight would provide. In this strange illumination, your family settles into the quiet activities that conserve energy while providing necessary mental stimulation. The children sit close together near the fire, their thin bodies positioned to absorb maximum warmth from the flames while minimizing heat loss to the cold air that fills the rest of the dwelling. Emma works with small pieces of fabric, practicing the sewing skills that have become essential for survival. Her young fingers move slowly through the motions of basic stitching, learning techniques that will help maintain clothing and bedding throughout the continuing crisis. Each stitch represents progress in mastering skills that previous generations learned gradually over years of apprenticeship. Thomas occupies himself with the maintenance of small tools and implements that require gentle handling and careful attention. A wooden spoon gets smoothed with a piece of rough stone. A clay bowl receives inspection for developing cracks that might threaten its integrity. These activities provide purpose while avoiding the energy expenditure of more active pursuits. Your wife continues her work with the mending pile, addressing clothing damage that accumulates daily through normal wear and the stress of constant use. Her needle moves through fabric with the practiced efficiency of someone who understands that every repair extends the useful life of irreplaceable garments. Thread gets used sparingly, with each stitch calculated to provide maximum reinforcement with minimum material consumption. The repair work follows established priorities based on the importance of different garments for family survival. Items that provide protection against cold receive attention before those that serve primarily decorative purposes. Clothing worn by children gets priority because their growing bodies place additional stress on seams and fabric. Outer garments receive more careful attention than undergarments because exposure to weather accelerates wear patterns. You spend the quiet hours maintaining tools and implements that must continue functioning despite the lack of replacement parts or repair materials. The knife blade gets attention with a sharpening stone, restoring the edge that dulls with constant use. The handle receives examination for signs of loosening or damage that might affect the tool's reliability. Tool maintenance extends beyond simple cleaning and sharpening to include preventive measures that might extend useful life under demanding conditions. Metal surfaces get treated with whatever materials might prevent rust and corrosion. Wooden handles get smoothed to prevent splinters and cracks that could compromise grip or structural integrity. The fire requires constant but minimal attention throughout the day to maintain heat while avoiding waste of precious fuel supplies. Wood gets added piece by piece with careful attention to burning rates and heat output. The goal involves sustaining a flame that provides adequate warmth without consuming resources faster than absolutely necessary. Fire management has become a sophisticated skill requiring understanding of different wood types, burning characteristics, and heat distribution patterns. Hardwoods burn longer but require more energy to ignite. Softwoods catch fire easily but consume quickly. Bark provides quick heat but little sustained burning. Each fuel type serves specific purposes in the overall heating strategy. The afternoon brings gradual preparation for evening activities and eventual sleep. Bedding gets arranged and rearranged to eliminate compressed areas and maintain maximum insulation properties. Blankets get shaken and folded to ensure even distribution of remaining insulating materials. Sleeping surfaces get checked for objects or irregularities that might interfere with rest. Personal hygiene receives attention within the constraints imposed by limited water and soap supplies. Faces and hands get cleaned with small amounts of water warmed over the fire. Hair gets combed and arranged to prevent tangling and matting that would require additional resources to address. Basic cleanliness helps prevent illness that could prove fatal under current conditions. Clothing gets changed and rearranged according to daily schedules that maximize warmth while allowing for necessary cleaning and maintenance. Garments worn during the day get folded and positioned to serve as additional bedding during sleep. Clean clothes get reserved for the next day's activities while dirty items await washing when resources permit. The children receive special attention during afternoon preparations because their smaller bodies require additional protection against heat loss during the cold nights. Extra blankets get arranged around their sleeping areas. Warm stones from near the fire get wrapped in cloth and positioned to provide heat sources that will last through several hours of darkness. Food preparation for the evening meal follows the same careful protocols established for morning consumption. Remaining grain gets counted and divided according to family needs and available supplies. Water gets measured with precision to ensure adequate cooking liquid, while avoiding waste through excessive steam production. The cooking process proceeds slowly and deliberately, with constant attention to fuel consumption and heat management. The pot sits over carefully controlled flames that provide sufficient heat for cooking without wasting energy through excessive temperature or prolonged cooking times. Steam rises in gentle wisps that carry the thin aroma of grain and water, combining into basic nourishment. Conversation during the afternoon remains quiet and focused on immediate concerns, rather than speculation about future possibilities that remain beyond current control. Topics include practical matters like tool maintenance, clothing repair, and resource management. Discussions avoid subjects that might increase anxiety or consume mental energy without providing useful information. The family takes turns reading from the few written materials available in the dwelling. Religious texts provide comfort and moral guidance during difficult circumstances. Practical manuals offer information about techniques that might prove useful for survival activities. Reading serves multiple purposes, providing education, entertainment, and mental stimulation that helps maintain psychological health. Storytelling continues the oral tradition that preserves knowledge and provides entertainment without requiring written materials or additional resources. Tales from previous generations offer examples of survival during difficult times. Fictional stories provide escape from current circumstances while building vocabulary and imagination. The stories get told in quiet voices that conserve energy while maintaining the human connections essential for psychological survival. Chapter 11. The Endless Cycle. Evening preparation begins, while afternoon light still allows for detailed work that will be needed throughout the night hours. The fire gets arranged for extended burning, with larger pieces of wood positioned to provide heat through the dark period when adding fuel becomes more difficult and dangerous in low-light conditions. Food storage receives attention to protect remaining supplies from moisture, temperature changes, and possible intrusion by insects or small animals that might be attracted by the scent of edible materials. Containers get sealed as thoroughly as possible with available materials. Storage areas get checked for signs of pest activity that might threaten precious resources. The dwelling itself requires evening preparation to maintain protection against cold air and possible precipitation during night hours. Openings get covered with whatever materials provide insulation against heat loss. Structural elements get checked for damage that might compromise the building's ability to shelter its occupants from weather conditions. Security measures receive attention as darkness approaches and visibility decreases to levels that might allow unwelcome intrusion. The door gets barricaded with available materials to prevent unauthorized entry. Windows or other openings get monitored and secured against possible threats from desperate neighbors or wildlife seeking shelter or food. Personal preparation for sleep involves careful arrangement of clothing and bedding to maximize warmth retention while allowing adequate freedom of movement during rest. Garments get layered according to insulating properties and comfort requirements. Bedding gets arranged to provide cushioning against hard surfaces while maintaining heat retention around the body. The transition from day activities to evening rest proceeds gradually as the family settles into sleeping positions and arrangements that have been developed through months of experience with inadequate heating and limited bedding materials. Bodies get positioned to share warmth while allowing each person adequate space for comfortable rest. Final tasks of the day include banking the fire to provide heat through night hours without requiring frequent attention that would disturb sleep. Embers get covered with ash to control burning rate while maintaining heat production. Fuel supplies get positioned for easy access if fire maintenance becomes necessary during dark hours. Prayer time offers opportunity for expressing gratitude for successful completion of another day, while requesting continued protection and eventual improvement in circumstances that remain beyond human control. These moments of reflection acknowledge both the difficulty of current situation and the hope that persistence will eventually lead to better conditions. The children settle into sleep first, their smaller bodies nestled beneath whatever coverings provide protection against the cold air that fills the dwelling despite the presence of fire. Their breathing becomes regular and peaceful as exhaustion from the day's survival activities overcomes discomfort from hunger and cold. Adult sleep comes more gradually as minds continue processing the day's events and planning for tomorrow's challenges. Consciousness fades slowly as the fire burns lower and darkness deepens around the small circle of warmth that represents safety and survival in a world that has become hostile to human life. Night sounds penetrate the dwelling, wind moving through damaged structures, the distant calls of animals, the settling sounds of buildings stressed by temperature changes. These sounds become familiar background noise that marks the passage of time through dark hours when sleep provides temporary escape from survival concerns. The fire burns steadily through the night, consuming fuel at a carefully calculated rate that provides heat while avoiding waste through excessive consumption. Flames flicker in patterns that create moving shadows on walls and ceiling. The light provides psychological comfort beyond its practical heating function. Dreams, when they come, often feature memories of abundance and warmth that feel increasingly distant from current reality. Images of bright sunshine, plentiful food, and comfortable circumstances create temporary relief from the constant stress of survival. These dream experiences provide mental restoration that helps maintain hope and determination. Morning approaches gradually as grey light begins to penetrate the dwelling through whatever openings exist in walls and covering materials. The fire has burned lower during night hours, but continues providing essential heat that makes awakening possible without immediate danger from cold exposure. the daily cycle begins again, with the same inventory procedures and careful resource management that have characterized every morning for months beyond counting. Grain gets counted, kernel by kernel. Water gets measured with precision. Fuel supplies get evaluated for the day's heating and cooking needs. And so the pattern continues, day after day, week after week, month after month, as your family maintains existence in a world that has forgotten how to provide the basic conditions necessary for human life. Each day requires the same careful attention to detail, the same conservation of resources, the same determination to survive until circumstances finally improve. The routine provides structure that helps maintain psychological stability during circumstances that might otherwise prove overwhelming. Familiar activities create predictability in an unpredictable world. Small accomplishments provide satisfaction that helps balance the constant stress of inadequate resources and uncertain future. Through repetition, survival activities become automatic responses that require less conscious attention and energy expenditure. Bodies adapt to reduced caloric intake and constant cold exposure. Minds adjust to focus on immediate necessities rather than long-term planning that current circumstances make impossible. The family functions as a cooperative unit where each member contributes according to ability while receiving support according to need. Children help with simple tasks that conserve adult energy for more demanding activities. Adults share responsibilities in ways that maximize efficiency while providing backup coverage for essential functions. Resources get managed through careful planning that balances current needs against future requirements that remain unpredictable. Consumption rates get calculated to extend supply duration while maintaining adequate nutrition for survival. Every decision involves weighing immediate benefits against long-term consequences that might affect family welfare. Hope becomes both burden and blessing as daily survival continues despite circumstances that seem impossible to endure indefinitely. The possibility of eventual improvement provides motivation to continue survival efforts. Yet hope also creates psychological stress when improvement fails to materialize according to expectations. Chapter 12. The slow passage of time. Time moves differently when each moment requires careful attention to survival details that cannot be ignored or postponed. Hours stretch longer when filled with activities that demand complete focus on immediate necessities. Days blend together when marked by similar routines, rather than the varied experiences that once distinguished one period from another. The morning light, such as it is, filters through the persistent grey atmosphere that has become the permanent characteristic of daylight hours. The quality of illumination never varies, never brightens, never suggests that normal weather patterns might eventually return. This consistency creates a sense of eternal present where yesterday and tomorrow become less meaningful than the immediate requirements of now. Your body has adapted to the reduced caloric intake through changes that would have alarmed you in previous circumstances, but now represent necessary adjustments to survival conditions. Movement becomes more deliberate, more economical, wasting no energy on unnecessary gestures or activities. Muscles have adjusted to perform essential functions while conserving resources for basic metabolic needs. The children show similar adaptations in their behavior and energy expenditure. Play activities have evolved to require minimal physical exertion while still providing mental stimulation and social interaction. Their games focus on quiet storytelling, simple songs, and gentle activities that can be conducted within the limited space and energy constraints of current circumstances. Emma spends long periods working with needle and thread, developing skills that will serve her throughout life, while contributing to family survival through clothing maintenance and repair. Her small fingers have become surprisingly adept at the precise movements required for effective sewing. Each stitch represents both learning and practical contribution to household management. Thomas occupies himself with tool maintenance and simple craft activities that improve useful items while avoiding energy waste through excessive activity. His work with wooden implements helps maintain their functionality while teaching him skills that will prove valuable throughout his life. The quiet nature of these activities suits the low-energy environment of survival living. Your wife continues her steady work with household management activities that keep the family functioning despite inadequate resources and difficult conditions. Her approach to daily challenges reflects years of experience managing household economies under normal circumstances, now applied to the extreme conditions that current survival requires. The distribution of daily tasks follows patterns established through trial and error during the long months of crisis. Each family member has developed expertise in specific areas while maintaining general knowledge about all survival activities. This specialization improves efficiency while ensuring that essential knowledge remains available if circumstances change. Food preparation continues to follow the same careful protocols that maximize nutrition while minimizing resource consumption. The morning meal consists of the same careful division of inadequate supplies among family members whose needs exceed what can be provided. Each portion gets measured with mathematical precision to ensure fair distribution of available resources. The cooking process proceeds at the same deliberate pace that has characterized every meal for months beyond counting. Heat application gets controlled carefully to extract maximum nutritional value while avoiding waste through excessive fuel consumption or inadequate preparation. Steam rises from the cooking pot in familiar patterns that mark the transformation of grain and water into basic sustenance. Consumption of the meal follows established routines that maximize both nutritional absorption and psychological satisfaction from the eating experience. Each spoonful receives complete attention. Each grain kernel gets chewed thoroughly to extract full nutritional value. Conversation remains minimal to allow complete focus on the consumption process. The cleaning activities that follow each meal use minimal resources while maintaining hygiene standards necessary for health preservation. Water gets heated to improve cleaning effectiveness, then used sequentially for pot cleaning, bowl cleaning, and personal washing. Nothing gets wasted. Every drop serves multiple purposes before final disposal. Tool maintenance receives daily attention because implements must continue functioning without possibility of replacement or professional repair. Blades get sharpened to maintain cutting efficiency. Handles get checked for damage that might compromise tool reliability. Storage gets arranged to protect implements from moisture and damage during periods when they are not in active use. Clothing maintenance follows similar principles of preservation and repair that extend useful life under demanding conditions. Tears get mended before they can expand into larger problems. Seams get reinforced at stress points where repeated use threatens structural integrity. Fabric gets treated to resist moisture and maintain insulating properties. The dwelling itself requires constant attention to maintain its protection against weather conditions that could prove fatal if proper shelter fails. Walls get checked for developing cracks or gaps that might allow cold air infiltration. Roof areas get monitored for leaks that could damage stored supplies or create unsafe living conditions. Fire management continues throughout the day with careful attention to fuel consumption rates and heat distribution patterns. Wood gets added piece by piece according to burning characteristics and heating requirements. Flames get maintained at levels that provide adequate warmth without wasting resources through excessive consumption or uncontrolled burning. The afternoon hours bring preparation activities for evening needs and eventual sleep requirements. Bedding gets arranged to maximize warmth retention while providing adequate comfort for rest. Personal items get organized for easy access during dark hours when visibility limitations make finding things more difficult and dangerous. Water collection and storage receive attention whenever precipitation provides opportunity to supplement existing supplies. Containers get positioned to catch rainwater despite its strange characteristics and questionable purity. Collection methods get improved through experimentation and experience with different techniques and materials. Storage management involves careful monitoring of remaining supplies and consumption rates to predict how long current resources might last under various scenarios. Mathematical calculations help determine optimal rationing strategies that balance current needs against future requirements that remain unpredictable and uncertain. Chapter 13. The Deeper Stillness. The evening meal preparation follows the same methodical approach that has characterized food activities throughout the long crisis. Remaining grain gets counted with the same precision applied to every previous meal. Water gets measured according to cooking requirements and available fuel for heating. The process continues unchanged, day after day, week after week, month after month. After cooking proceeds at the familiar, deliberate pace that extracts maximum nutrition while conserving precious fuel supplies. Heat gets applied gradually to allow proper preparation without waste through excessive temperature or prolonged cooking times. The pot sits over carefully controlled flames that provide exactly the heat needed for proper food preparation. The aroma that rises from the cooking pot carries the same thin scent that has marked every meal during the period of shortage. Grain and water combine to create steam that fills the dwelling with the familiar smell of basic sustenance. The scent triggers hunger responses that must be controlled and managed to prevent energy waste through excessive anticipation. Serving follows established protocols that ensure fair distribution of inadequate resources among family members whose nutritional needs exceed what can be provided. Portions get divided with mathematical precision to maintain equity while acknowledging that different body sizes require different amounts of sustenance for basic survival. Your bowl receives its allocated portion of thin soup and grain pieces. The liquid appears pale and provides minimal substance beyond the basic combination of water and grain that forms its foundation. Yet this represents nourishment, and nourishment represents continued existence for another day in circumstances that test the limits of human endurance. The children receive their portions with the serious attention that has characterized their approach to meals throughout the crisis. They understand that this represents the most important event of their evening. Their thin hands wrap around bowls to absorb whatever warmth the liquid might provide, while they consume their allocated sustenance. Your wife takes her portion, which remains smaller than what other family members receive, because she continues to insist that growing children need more food than adults. Her sacrifice has become routine, though her body shows clear evidence of the inadequate nutrition she endures, while ensuring her family receives whatever additional sustenance she can provide. Consumption proceeds with the same deliberate slowness that maximizes both nutritional absorption and psychological satisfaction from the eating experience. Each spoonful gets complete attention from the moment it leaves the bowl until the last trace disappears and gets absorbed into the body's systems. The grain pieces require careful chewing to extract their full nutritional value through complete breakdown before swallowing. Each kernel gets processed thoroughly to ensure that no nutrients escape through hasty consumption. The texture provides variety that makes the meal seem more substantial than its actual nutritional content would suggest. Cleaning follows consumption with the same resource conservation principles that govern all household activities. The cooking pot gets rinsed with heated water that improves cleaning effectiveness while minimizing waste. The same water then serves to clean eating bowls before finally being used for personal washing and hygiene maintenance. Evening preparations begin, while daylight still allows for detailed work that will be needed throughout the night hours. The fire gets arranged for extended burning, with fuel positioned to provide heat through dark periods, when adding wood becomes more difficult and potentially dangerous in low visibility conditions. Personal preparations for sleep involve the same careful arrangements that have been developed through months of experience with inadequate heating and limited bedding materials. Clothing gets layered according to insulating properties and comfort requirements. Bedding gets arranged to provide maximum warmth retention while allowing adequate freedom of movement during rest. The children settle into their sleeping positions first, their smaller bodies requiring additional protection against heat loss during the cold night hours. Extra coverings get arranged around them. Warm stones from near the fire get wrapped in cloth and positioned to provide heat sources that will continue radiating warmth through several hours of darkness. The transition to sleep comes gradually as consciousness fades and the day's survival activities give way to the restoration that sleep provides. Bodies relax into positions that conserve heat while allowing adequate rest. Minds release the constant vigilance required for survival decision-making and allow deeper rest to begin. Night sounds become familiar background noise that marks the passage of dark hours without causing alarm or concern. Wind moves through structures, with the same patterns heard every night for months. Small animals search for food and shelter with the same desperation that characterizes all life during this period of scarcity. The fire burns steadily through night hours, consuming fuel at rates carefully calculated to provide heat while avoiding waste through excessive consumption. Flames create moving patterns of light and shadow that provide psychological comfort beyond their practical heating function. The warm glow represents safety and survival in a world that has become hostile to human life. Dreams, when they come, often feature images of abundance and comfort that feel increasingly distant from current reality. Memories of adequate food, proper warmth, and normal weather conditions create temporary relief from the constant stress of survival concerns. These experiences provide mental restoration that helps maintain hope and psychological stability. Morning approaches with the same grey light that has marked every dawn for months beyond counting. The fire has burned lower during night hours, but continues providing essential heat that makes awakening possible without immediate danger from cold exposure. Another day begins with the same challenges and the same determination to continue surviving. The daily inventory begins again, with grain counting, water measurement, and fuel evaluation that determine the shape of another day spent managing inadequate resources and uncertain circumstances. Each morning brings the same careful accounting procedures that have become as automatic as breathing after months of repetition. And so the cycle continues, day following day, week following week, month following month, as your family maintains existence in conditions that challenge the fundamental assumptions about what circumstances human beings can endure. Each day requires the same attention to detail, the same conservation of resources, the same determination to survive until better times finally arrive. The routine provides structure that helps maintain psychological stability during circumstances that might otherwise prove overwhelming to human endurance. Familiar activities create predictability in an unpredictable world where normal expectations no longer apply. Small daily accomplishments provide satisfaction that helps balance the constant stress of inadequate resources and uncertain future prospects. Chapter 14. The Endless Present. The rhythm of survival has settled into patterns so familiar that they require no conscious thought or planning. Your body awakens each morning at the same time, responding to internal signals rather than external light that no longer varies in meaningful ways. The grey illumination that passes for daylight provides just enough visibility to begin the daily activities that have become as automatic as breathing. Movement from sleep to wakefulness proceeds slowly, conserving energy while allowing time for your body to adjust to the cold air that fills the dwelling despite the presence of fire throughout the night hours. Muscles respond gradually to the demands of another day, moving with the deliberate efficiency that has become characteristic of all physical activity during the long period of reduced nutrition. The fire pit contains embers that glow softly beneath a layer of ash that has protected them through the dark hours. These coals represent the continuation of warmth and the possibility of cooking that will be needed for survival throughout another day. The sight of glowing embers provides psychological comfort that extends beyond their practical heating value. Fuel selection follows established patterns based on months of experience with different wood types and burning characteristics. Each piece gets evaluated for its contribution to sustained heat production while avoiding waste through rapid consumption or inefficient burning. The goal remains the same: adequate warmth for cooking and comfort while conserving resources for future needs. Kindling preparation proceeds through motions that have become so familiar they require no conscious attention. Small twigs get broken to precise lengths. Bark gets peeled into strips of optimal thickness. Dry grass gets prepared in quantities that will support flame development without waste through excess preparation or inadequate supply. The fire-building process follows steps that have been repeated countless times, with results that have become predictable and reliable. Tinder catches from carefully created sparks. Kindling ignites from tinder flames. Larger fuel pieces sustain the fire that will provide heat for cooking and warmth throughout the day. Water preparation involves the same careful measurement and heating that has characterized every meal during the long crisis. The cooking pot receives its allocated portion of liquid, despite the strange characteristics that all precipitation has acquired since the sky changed. Heat application proceeds gradually to eliminate any harmful elements while conserving fuel through efficient temperature management. Grain counting continues with the mathematical precision that determines family survival from day to day. Each kernel gets accounted for individually because the difference between adequate nutrition and starvation has been reduced to such small margins. The counting process has become a meditation on the relationship between resources and survival. The morning meal preparation follows protocols that extract maximum nutritional value while using minimum resources for cooking and preparation. Heat gets applied at levels that soften grain and combine ingredients without waste through excessive temperature or prolonged cooking times. The familiar aroma of basic sustenance begins to fill the dwelling. Your family settles into eating positions that have become established through months of shared meals under difficult circumstances. The children take their places with the serious attention that has characterized their approach to food throughout the crisis. Their thin bodies require careful positioning to maintain warmth while consuming their allocated portions. Serving follows the same division protocols that ensure fair distribution of inadequate resources among family members whose needs exceed what can be provided. Mathematical precision governs portion allocation while acknowledging that different body sizes require different amounts of sustenance for basic survival and continued existence. The consumption process proceeds with deliberate slowness that maximizes both nutritional absorption and psychological satisfaction from the eating experience. Each spoonful receives complete attention. Each grain piece gets processed thoroughly to extract full nutritional value through complete breakdown before swallowing. Conversation during meals remains minimal to conserve energy and allow complete focus on the consumption process that represents the most important activity of each day. Words require energy to produce and process. During eating times, all available energy must be dedicated to nutrition absorption and utilization. Cleaning activities follow consumption with the same resource conservation principles that govern all household management during the period of scarcity. Water gets heated to improve cleaning effectiveness while avoiding waste through excessive temperature or volume. Sequential use maximizes utility while minimizing consumption of precious liquid supplies. Tool maintenance receives the same daily attention that has characterized equipment care throughout the long crisis. Implements must continue functioning without possibility of replacement or professional repair services. Blades get sharpened to maintain cutting efficiency. Handles get inspected for damage that might compromise reliability or safety. The knife receives particular attention because its functionality affects food preparation, craft activities, and general household management tasks. The blade gets worked against sharpening stones to maintain the edge that dulls through constant use. The handle gets examined for signs of loosening or damage that could compromise grip or structural integrity. Other implements receive similar care according to their importance for survival activities. The cooking pot gets inspected for developing weak spots that might threaten its continued utility. Sewing implements get maintained to ensure their availability for clothing repair and household textile management that has become essential for protection against cold. Clothing maintenance follows the same preservation principles that extend useful life under demanding conditions that accelerate wear and damage. Tears get mended before they can expand into problems that require more extensive repair work. Seams get reinforced at stress points, where repeated use threatens the structural integrity of essential garments. The mending process requires careful management of thread supplies that cannot be replaced under current circumstances. Each stitch must accomplish maximum repair effectiveness while using minimum materials. Patches get applied using fabric salvaged from garments that have become too damaged for continued wear, but still contain usable material. Your wife works steadily through the pile of items that require attention, addressing problems in order of their importance for family survival and comfort. Children's clothing receives priority because their growing bodies place additional stress on seams and fabric, while their smaller size makes them more vulnerable to heat loss through inadequate protection. Personal hygiene receives attention within constraints imposed by limited water supplies and soap that has become unavailable. Faces and hands get cleaned with small amounts of heated water that maximizes cleaning effectiveness, while avoiding waste through excessive volume or temperature. Basic cleanliness helps prevent illness that could prove fatal under current conditions. Hair care involves combing and arrangement techniques that prevent tangling and matting without requiring additional water or cleaning materials that remain unavailable. Proper hair management conserves body heat while maintaining basic hygiene standards that support overall health during the challenging circumstances of prolonged survival. Chapter 15. The Eternal Rhythm. The afternoon hours settle into the same quiet activities that have characterized this period of each day throughout the long months of crisis. Energy conservation governs all activities, while family members engage in tasks that provide mental stimulation without requiring physical exertion that would waste precious calories needed for basic survival. Emma continues her work with needle and thread, developing skills that will serve her throughout life, while contributing immediately to family survival through maintenance of essential clothing and bedding. Her young fingers have acquired surprising dexterity through constant practice with sewing techniques that once seemed beyond her capabilities. The fabric she works with shows signs of repeated repair and reuse that would have made it unsuitable for normal purposes in previous circumstances. Yet current conditions require different standards of acceptability. Function matters more than appearance when survival depends on maintaining protection against cold and moisture. Thomas occupies himself with maintenance activities that improve household implements while providing learning opportunities about craft techniques and tool care. His work with wooden items helps maintain their functionality while teaching skills that will prove valuable throughout his lifetime, regardless of future circumstances. The quiet nature of these activities suits the low-energy environment that has become characteristic of daily life during the extended period of inadequate nutrition and fuel supplies. Movement gets minimized to conserve calories. Activities get selected for their contribution to survival rather than entertainment or personal satisfaction. Your own work focuses on preparation and maintenance activities that support family survival through careful management of limited resources and deteriorating equipment. Tool sharpening continues with attention to techniques that maximize blade effectiveness while minimizing metal loss through excessive grinding or improper angle maintenance. Storage management requires constant attention to protect remaining supplies from moisture, temperature changes, and possible intrusion by pests attracted to any available food sources. Containers get sealed and monitored. Storage areas get checked for signs of damage or contamination that might threaten precious resources. The grain storage receives particular attention because these supplies represent the difference between continued survival and starvation for your family. Each container gets inspected for signs of moisture infiltration or pest activity that could compromise the safety and nutritional value of remaining food supplies. Water storage follows similar protocols designed to maintain quality while preventing loss through evaporation or contamination. Collection containers get cleaned and positioned to maximize precipitation capture when weather conditions provide opportunity to supplement existing supplies that diminish daily through cooking and cleaning activities. Fire management continues throughout the day with careful attention to fuel consumption rates and heat distribution patterns that provide adequate warmth while avoiding waste through excessive burning or uncontrolled flame development. Wood gets added according to burning characteristics and heating requirements. The dwelling itself receives ongoing attention to maintain protection against weather conditions that could prove dangerous if proper shelter fails to provide adequate protection. Walls get monitored for developing problems. Roof areas get checked for leaks that might damage stored supplies or create unsafe living conditions. Evening preparation begins gradually as afternoon light reaches its maximum intensity and begins the subtle transition toward the darker hours that mark the end of another day spent managing survival under impossible circumstances. Activities shift toward preparation for sleep and the restoration that rest provides. Bedding arrangement follows established patterns that maximize warmth retention while providing adequate comfort for family members whose bodies have adapted to sleeping on hard surfaces with minimal cushioning. Blankets get positioned to share heat while maintaining individual sleeping space. Personal preparation for sleep involves clothing adjustments that optimize warmth retention during night hours, when fire heat may not reach sleeping areas effectively. Garments get layered according to insulating properties.